Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ian Bull, and I welcome you all here today as we gather together with grateful appreciation and in memory of our dear friend, Noel Arthur Dobson, who passed away at his home last Sunday morning at the age of 81, surrounded by his loving family. I know I speak on behalf of every person here today by offering my deepest and most sincere sympathies to Margot, Noel's loving and devoted wife of more than 57 years, their daughters Pauline, Christine and Louise, and their partners Lee, David and Dennis, and to Noel's brothers Ray and Jeff, and to Noel and Margot's grandchildren Matthew, Tom, Fletcher, Zara, Samantha, Tommy, Peter and Max. I'd also like to acknowledge those who are with us today, but in the virtual sense, and who are joining us today via the live streaming service that's been provided by Noel's family. And the message for those joining us on live streaming, you are a very important part of today's memorial service, and I know that Noel's family is very appreciative of your interest and your attendance, even if it is in the virtual sense. Earlier this morning we laid Noel to rest at the Pine Lodge Lawn Cemetery, where his family had the chances to say their goodbyes to a very well-loved and well-respected man, and somebody who was very crucial and instrumental in everything that they did. So we now have our public memorial service where friends, colleagues and others can join in and celebrate the life of Noel Dobson. But we gather here today not just to say our goodbyes to a man who touched so many lives and who achieved so very much for the local community, but just as importantly, we're also here in support of Noel's family as they come to terms with the loss of a man who meant so much to them and who had such a significant influence on their lives. So today we'll pay tribute to Noel's life. We'll listen to some of his favourite songs. We'll watch a photographic collection of some wonderful moments in his life, and we'll listen to some touching tributes from his daughters as they deliver the eulogy. And at the completion of this memorial service, we hope that you can all stay here at the club and continue with the celebrations by sharing refreshments and memories of Noel with members of his family. Those of us that Noel leaves behind are truly grateful for his life and his love, and for that alone, we have much to celebrate today. So today, we will do just that. This afternoon's memorial service is going to be one of celebration, reflection and thanks. I'd like to invite Noel's grandchildren, Matt, Tom, Fletcher, Zara, Tommy and Max to come forward, please, and light the special candles of remembrance. Although grandchildren Sam and Peter can't be here today, Matt and Tom will light candles on their behalf. Thank you.
There is freedom within, there is freedom without. Try to catch a delusion of paper cloud. There's a battle ahead, many battles are lost, but you'll never see the end of the road while you're traveling with me. Hey now, don't dream it's over. Hey now, when the world comes in, they come to build a wall between us. Now we know they won't win.
The candles not only represent Noel's life on this earth and the connection he shared with his wife, brothers, children and grandchildren, but collectively they are symbols of the grief that we share this afternoon and the pain that we are feeling. The heat of the candle's flame also represents the warmth and closeness of family and the shelter that it provides. And the flickering flames are also symbols that just as the flames move randomly in different directions, so too do our lives. We light these candles for Noel as symbols that his light will always shine upon us and that he will be with us forever. To Noel's family, Facing the prospect of losing somebody who's so loved and so important to you is, as we all understand, extremely difficult. But please take comfort in the knowledge that you are not alone at this very difficult time, as your extended family and friends are here to support you and to love you, just as they have always done. I know that you're all deeply saddened by the passing of a man who was an essential part of your lives and somebody who laid a solid foundation for the wonderful family that you are today. Noel was clearly so much more than just the patriarch of the family. As we all know, life is a wonderful and sometimes curious and challenging entity. To some degree, there are things we can control, and as much as we might like to think we can, sometimes those plans go awry. As we don't know what tomorrow will bring, we should focus first on the present, share our skills and experiences with others, be generous with our love and our time, and let those closest to us know just how you feel about them. And despite the sadness and grief associated with Noel's passing, his family did have some quality time with him before he left them. Warm and loving feelings were exchanged, and nothing was left unsaid, and for that, his family truly grateful. Above all the uncertainties and mysteries on life, the only thing that we do know is that our journeys will not last forever. Just as we are born to live, so too are we born to die. And although death is something that we don't want to talk about, the fact is we really have not much knowledge of life and death, or when it is our time to pass from this earth. And I think the reason that we don't like to discuss it is because it is unimaginable to think about the loss of somebody that we deeply love and who is so important to us. In reality, this is a journey we must all take, and our lives will be assessed when it's our time to pass on the worth of our life on this earth. And it's not the length of our lives that is most important, it is what you achieve during your lifetime. Your contribution to the lives of others, the positive influence that you have on your family members and your friends, and the contribution you've made to your community. And Noel ticks each and every one of those boxes and does so in spades. It's not what you have taken, it is what you have given. As we grow older, we tend to appreciate and reflect more and more on what we have. The goal isn't to live forever, the goal is to leave something that will. Noel's legacy is immense, and it is something for all of us to reflect upon and be thankful for. In every sense, Noel has lived an extremely happy and fruitful life, a life filled with love, generosity, commitment and sacrifice. His contribution to what we know now as the City of Greater Shepparton and its people has been simply outstanding, and a contribution that he gave so gladly and so unselfishly. Noel Arthur Dobson has been an ornament to this community and somebody that I would regard as a true icon of this city. Through his hard work and kind deeds, Noel led and guided his family with strength and positivity, but most of all love, and left an indelible impression on each and every one of you. And when I met with Margot, Pauline, Christine and Louise in preparation for today's service, I learned of a man who led an extraordinary life. He worked very hard to support his family and above all lived his life with integrity. And while I don't want to spoil anyone's thunder before Noel's eulogy is read in just a few moments, I'd like to mention a few words and phrases that Noel's family shared with me to describe Noel the man. A hard-working, forward-thinking and very selfless man who was always more concerned about the health and lives of others ahead of his own. Always working hard behind the scenes to get things done, Noel was described to me as a brave and quiet fighter. And in response to these comments from the family members, I offered them my own phrases to describe Noel as I knew him during the past 30 years of my time in Shepparton. And these are in no particular order. His commitment and pride in his loving family, which I suspect is certainly number one. His contribution and commitment to his community. And above all, I say hand on heart, if there's one word that I think would be the most fitting to describe somebody with respect, and that is that Noel was a true gentleman. At the completion of the memorial service this afternoon, it would be terrific if you could all stay here and share some refreshments and memories. Understand that some of you will have other commitments and some of you may have to return to work, but for those that can stay, it would mean a heck of a lot to the family if you could share some memories with them. Because sharing memories and feelings of your own struggles and sadness with others is an important step to coming to terms with the loss of a loved one. Together, you should share these feelings and not be afraid to express them. I'd now like to call upon Pauline, Christine and Louise to come forward and deliver their father's eulogy on behalf of the family. Thank you, Pauline, Christine and Louise. Thank you.
Noel was the firstborn son to Trav and Grace on the 16th of July in 1939. Trav, who had emigrated to Australia from England, met Grace and they commenced a life together. They had two other children, Ray and Jeff, both of whom are here today. Noel often shared stories of them growing up together on Benalla Road and travelling to Shep East Primary School on horseback. Three brothers, all talented sportsmen, enjoyed a healthy rivalry, whether it be playing against each other on the field or as rival members of local football teams. All three boys attended Albury Grammar School, with Noel paving the way for the two younger brothers. We'd now like to also share some reflections of our own on what Dad meant to us. Dobbo to many, Noel to some, Dad to me. I know many of you have known Dad for many years, but hopefully I can just say a few words that will try and capture the person that he was. So raised in Shepparton, Dad spent most of his time here in the region. For many years, the furthest he and Mum ever travelled was up to the Gold Coast for 3 weeks of the school holidays to stay at the apartments on the beach at Coolangatta. We'd undertake the 3-day drive up there in the Kingswood, setting off in the middle of the night, stopping at West Wyalong for an egg and bacon breakfast. It was a really good breakfast. Those holidays we shared with Maury Rollins and his family, and I do recall one of those holidays also with the Fergusons. They were great holidays, and I've got really fond memories of doing the really simple things with Dad, like beach fishing and walking down to the Currumbin pub to have curried prawns and rice. That was a real treat. But the very special moment of the afternoon was the walk home with a golden gay time in hand. And we only got that if we'd behaved during the counter meal. Overseas travel wasn't a high priority for Mum and Dad, but the first trip was to Fiji, which was actually a family holiday that Dad won through a Marupna Football Club raffle. And I actually think that Dad was the organiser of that raffle, but rest assured, I have been told that it wasn't rigged. There was a couple of other overseas trips that followed that, and then in later times, Mum and Dad really enjoyed some cruises in the Pacific with their friends, some who are here today, and I know that Dad really enjoyed that type of travel. But the Gold Coast did remain their favourite spot to holiday, and they continued to do that every year from the mid-80s up to taking their last trip in 2019. Fishing was one of Dad's loves, and certainly an activity I remember doing with him from a very early age. And I do remember him making the purchase of a bright yellow tinny. We'd pack up the ute on a Saturday or a Sunday with the rods and the bardy grubs and the tub of worms, which I'd been sent out to the garden earlier to dig. And we'd hook up the boat and off we'd go in search for that elusive Murray cod. We'd sit for hours in that tinny, sometimes with Ferg, trawling up and down looking for the best spots where the cod might be hiding. Dad was pretty savvy with his fishing, and in his time he landed a few big ones over the years. While waiting for the fish to bite, there were plenty of stories told and a fair smack of BS between Ferg and Dad that would be spoken, but most of all I do remember the laughs. Dad always talked about wanting to go deep sea game fishing which he eventually did with a great mate, Tom Elwood, in the early 90s. Tom is a dear friend of Dad's that the two met when they boarded together at Albury Grammar School in the 50s. They have remained mates all these years, and unfortunately Tom was a bit unwell and couldn't travel from Albury today. The deep sea fishing was a fantastic trip, and Dad landed the marlin he always dreamed of. On his return though, his only regret was that he hadn't done it when he was younger. So a lesson to us all, do today what you can. Dad's love of volunteering is evident through the many sporting and community groups he was a member of. It didn't matter what club Dad was involved with, he always was more than just a playing member. Whether he was the committee member or the president, the secretary, the groundsman, whatever job there was to be done, he always put his hand up and dived right in. Dad was quite adamant that today's celebration was to take place here in this room. Dad was instrumental in developing this facility, having done a deal with the council to obtain the land and relocating the bowling club from just across the road, just across the other side of the Midland Highway to this site. He loved how the club grew and flourished with its cash injection from the relocation and how this facility has continued to grow with the addition of the covered bowling rink outside, which is truly a magnificent facility. And just on that point about the club, I just wanted to pause to thank the members, the ladies who are going to do all the catering later, and the other members who we have seen over the last few days here, vacuuming, cleaning, and just being a great support and coming up and offering their support to us girls. So thank you very much for that. It was just 3 weeks ago that Dad was actually here attending the club's Christmas party. And I know he had a great night chatting to many of the members, and he was really happy to be back here where he felt very comfortable. Last week, Maury Rowlands visited Dad, and I think as Maury was walking out the door, Dad was pretty adamant that the beer would be flowing this afternoon, tasking Maury with the job of get the cool room full. I'm pretty sure Uncle Maury hasn't let his good mate down today on that one. Those two have shared many great memories together. Holidays, tennis tournaments, Christmas Eves, and plenty of barbecues at Maury's house, the corner of Woodell and John Street, and out at the orchard. The friendship between those two men was a very special one. Having lived in the region all his life, Dad's friendships were far-reaching, but some of the most solid were the group who became known as the Men's Dinner Group. This was made up of 4 couples, Mum and Dad, the Ballantynes, the Fergusons, and the Lows, who have dined together every 6 weeks for the past 30 years, or thereabouts. In fact, they actually can't remember how long it's been going, but it's at least 30 years. The concept of the men's dinner group was that the men did the cooking and the ladies would sit back and be waited on. There were themed nights, dress-up nights, and plenty of shenanigans that took place. Of course, the 4 blokes, Dad, Bill, Ferg and Jack, turned this into some very friendly rivalry, coming up with elaborate dishes and trying to outdo each other with their culinary skills. After a few years, the elaborate dishes took a back seat to simpler fare, but the friendships of that group are as strong today as it was 30 years ago. And it was so lovely that Bill and Diane, Lynn and Jack, Ferg and Denise were all at home just last week, and it was lovely that they had a chat to Dad, and I know that Dad really appreciated them all getting there to see him. Dad was a real salt-of-the-earth man. He never lived a 5-star lifestyle of grand hotels and flashy cars, and the things that were important to him were family and friendships. Anything else that came was a bonus. Last week I said to Dad he had raised 3 very independent, strong women, and that we could not have wanted for anything more. Everything he did was for us. The values and life lessons he taught us has allowed each of us to live our lives with passion, determination and pride. Thanks, Dad. You truly were a great man.
I had lots of firsts with Dad, so I'll start on a nice one. I drove my first car on the farm with Dad. That yellow tinny, we shared our first cigarette on the Murray River that Christine spoke about. I was the first and probably the last person to actually throw him off the back of a trailer feeding cattle. And the first time I was ever involved with a beach rescue was actually with Dad. So he got rescued by the Surf Lifesavers at Broadbeach, scolded by Margot, sent straight back to the apartment not to be seen at the beach for the remainder of the holiday. Dad was never really into being at everything, but he had a way of knowing what was important to attend. And when it came to watching us play hockey, round matches, club games just didn't cut it. It had to be a grand final, national or international match. They were pretty much his benchmark when it came to showing up. We could only get him down to McEwen Reserve hockey grounds here in Shep on grand final day, and even then, we never had his full attention. When I played, I never heard anyone in the crowd. The only voice that would ever catch my attention was Dad. And there wasn't a lot of variation in the words. It was either abusing the hell out of the umpire or yelling support for our team. When I was trying to write some words, I sort of came to the conclusion that I now understand maybe why I was the last child, because I was a little bit challenging at times for him. So Saturday mornings, off we would go. Dad and I, we'd head across to Marupna to Dobson's shoe store, and my job was to sweep that footpath before opening, put all the shoes back in the boxes after customers had tried them on. But like most little kids, I usually got bored, so I'd help myself to the till, take a little bit of cash, and off I'd go, down the street in Marupna to the newsagent and the local shops. And no wonder the poor bugger could never balance the till on a Saturday after close. Now, don't ask me why, but when we lived on the farm in Archer Street, I used to just run away for no reason. I'd just get up and off I'd go, down that driveway, full speed, and he would chase me in the ute, and when he caught up to me, I would dump the bike and hightail through that paddock just to avoid a belting. And not once did he ever catch me. Whoa, this one. So many Sundays in Hassett Street, I could never wish for the day away quick enough. There was a code of silence, and Mum would cover my bum every day, all day, to keep you from knowing the truth of a Saturday night out for a young underage schoolgirl. I owe you, Mum. But I think the clearest memory of being a challenging child for dearest father was my youngest days when we lived at Dobson Road. As Chris mentioned, fishing was a passion of his, and heading to the Murray River for Easter was a family tradition. But to catch fish, you need bait. So on the eve of the Easter holiday, we spent all day yabbing at the channel on the orchard. Dad was set, car, fishing rods, boat, you name it, it was packed. That day we carved that channel up. We had bait to last us a lifetime. And as the afternoon was closing, I noticed the buckets was not only full of yabbies, but accompanied by some of the biggest goulburn belly flies you've ever seen. So I went into protection mode because I knew how treasured the bait was, and I sprayed the bucket full of Aerogard to rid those bloody flies of yabbies. Not a happy Dobbo. That day he did catch me and I copped it. There was only ever one gift involved with the orchard at Dobson Road, the gift of my father. He was a gifted man, always looking to evolve with his business-savvy entrepreneurial vision. To make changes to grow goes hand in hand with taking risks, and what a roll of the dice it was when he made the decision to purchase his father's orchard. He was in his early 20s with his beautiful wife in tow and had his back to the wall both financially and physically, but with a very clear vision and an incredible work ethic. The risk paid its dividends. Being a successful orchardist wasn't enough. He wanted to exceed beyond just growing fruit and wanted to create something more for his family and his community. So with another roll of the dice and another financial risk, he invested in acquiring more land to create a slice of community. It wasn't about conceding to life as an orchardist, it was about exceeding past his comfort zone and creating Dobson Estate an incredible subdivision and a lifetime legacy for his community and also to us as a family. A place we can now always visit with our kids that reflects his life, his business now, and a platform that truly represents transition and his success. Understanding the importance of having a really good work ethic was something Dad instilled in us very early in life. Where was your next dollar coming from, he'd often say to me. Nothing comes from nothing. He had me working part-time at the milk bar at Colliver Road. God knows if I was even legal enough to work, old enough to work. But it was all about creating that solid work ethic that was the telling factor in my first job. We used to buy day-old calves at Archer Street and hand-raise them, and then we would have to make either an emotional or commercial decision on what to do next. Do we keep the pet or do we get the return on investment? He always put opportunities on the table, but were never forced upon us. My parents never pushed me with my sport. They probably should have pushed me a bit more with the school books, but I have no doubt the drive to succeed in my career came from understanding the elements of a good work ethic in my upbringing, and today I draw upon a lot of what Dad taught me when mentoring and guiding my own family. And family to Dad was everything. Nothing mattered more. Like most families, it never came without its challenges, and he got dealt some curveballs himself. But he would simply deflect them and move forward. never letting anyone take him or his family values off path. He was rock solid. I remember as recent as only a few years ago, he said to me, "I never want you girls or your families to be upset with each other. Life is too precious and there is too much love between us." This has been evident more than ever these last couple of weeks. His love and concern for Mum and the three of us, knowing his time is coming to a close, has simply blown me away, along with his warrior strength to never give in. Over the last week, the three of us and Nikki, our adopted sister, we've bunked in together, we've shared the load to basically keep the wheels turning, and we rallied around Mum and Dad to stay rock solid as we always will. You have been blessed, Mum, with one very devoted husband, and I have been blessed with the most amazing father.
Alrighty, so everyone says they've got the best dad in the world, but no one can beat my dad. He was the most selfless person that I know. Even in a time when he needed our care, his priority was Mum and his girls. Even in the days after Christmas, he kept saying to me, "Go home and get some rest." But I wasn't tired. He made us promise that we would look after the love of his life with comments like, "Make sure she doesn't fall over, put her in my hard chair, make sure she takes her tablets." His love and commitment to Mum was never more apparent than in his final few days. For a couple of weeks prior to Christmas, things were pretty tough for Dad, and he had a goal to get to Christmas. Although he had one of his grandchildren here in Shepparton, he had 7 others that he hadn't seen since the start of 2020, and he wanted to see them all. Lou was home a couple of weeks before Christmas, bringing Max with her. Dad would always light up at the sight of any of his grandchildren, but seeing Max was something that always brought a huge smile to his face. Zara made the trip down before Christmas, and then Fletcher was here on Christmas Day. It was almost like he was rallying the troops, and every time one of his grandkids turned up, Dad's face lit up. He was so proud of each and every one of them. Matt moving to Queensland at the start of last year was difficult for Dad, and he would ask after him every week. Matt arrived home unannounced late November, and the first place he stopped was Kensington Gardens, straight to Grandma and Granddad's. Dad had worried about him constantly, so much so that Matt's real reason for his early arrival back in Shepparton was kept from Dad. He didn't need anything else to worry about. He was already worried enough about Tom and Jasmine organising to build a new home. Can they afford to do that? Have they got their grants in? Are they going to get that first homeowners grant? Worried but so proud about the work ethic of his 2 eldest, the work ethic that his 2 eldest grandchildren showed. A work ethic that has been instilled in them through DNA. The apple never falls far from the tree. Those of you that have witnessed Dad's emotional speeches about how lucky he was, how much he loved his family, probably think they know how our last meal went down. We have to admit that we were sort of expecting a big final speech, but it didn't come. Dad sat in contemplation at the dinner table on Christmas night, dining on lobster, oysters and prawns, and announced that he was content and that he'd had enough. Give this man a goal, and he achieved it. We've seen Mum and Dad take on so many different things in times when it would have been easy to stop and give up. A pause may have been taken, things reassessed, and the direction changed, but they never stopped. From the orchard to a shoe shop in Maroopna, now that's a change of direction. But this change gave Dad a chance to reinvigorate his love of footy. Now, anyone that knows Maroopna knows that you're not really accepted into the town unless you're involved in the footy club. Who did this young buck think he was, coming from across the other side of the river into their town? So Mum and Dad did what he knew was best and threw himself right into the heart of that community, the footy club. Doing deals, securing players and coaches. I hate to think how much money was poured into that club through Mum and Dad's till. But it paid off with Maroopna defeating Shep United, not once, but twice, and gave Maroopna their first grand final win in 47 years. Hero status, but he was already a hero in our eyes. From the shoe shop, they opened up a sports store, High Striker. I think the reason they took this on was to give me something to do when I finished high school, but I had other ideas and took off to Bendigo. Mum running the shop, Dad moving back into the agricultural sector, as a rep for a chemical company shearing. And Dad's area was massive, up to Batlow, across to Mildura and then down into the Western District. This meant that Mum was left at home, raising the calves, doing the irrigation, as well as running Chris and Lou down to Melbourne for their trainings. Dad had taken on the family orchard at the age of around 23, just married the love of his life and had settled into life on the orchard when I was born, followed a couple of years later by Christine, and then came Lou. Sandra Memmott recalled this week the arrival of Lou was exciting news for both families. The Memmetts, for both families, the Memmetts and the Dobsons. She spoke of the morning in the back of the infamous Kingswood as Mum drove us all around to the Lemnos Primary School. There was obviously some great news, she had said, as Noel had leant over and given Margot a big kiss. When the car got moving, Christine and I apparently blurted out, "Mum's having a baby!" Noel was obviously over the moon. Later that year, little Louise arrived. That exciting news has given Dad a bit of curry throughout the years, and we now fondly remember Lou being called a bugger of a child. Boy, she kept him on his toes. Dad was always so proud of his girls, and although to this day had no idea about the rules of hockey, he followed us. Well, Chris and Lou around the world, me just up to Broman Street. But a very vivid memory that I treasure was playing grand finals there. The Dobsons and the Tingays made up half the team, probably more than half the team, if the truth be known. And Dad and George would always make an appearance on grand final day. But inevitably, grand final day was always VFL grand final day. This was not an easy decision for these two blokes. Watch the footy, support their girls. So resourceful as ever, Dad would load the TV into the boot, along with the esky, and bring the footy to the ground, where George and Dad proceeded to watch their girls, with the occasional call from the back of the car of, "Come on, Wingdangs!" Mum and Dad made their first trip overseas when Chris made the Aussie team to compete in Barcelona. They made some great memories together, sleeping on platforms at train stations and experiencing many things for the first time. They travelled with other hockey parents on that trip and came home with many funny stories. Then it was off to Atlanta when that bugger of a child made her Olympic debut. This time they were billeted out with a family and another great friendship was formed. Recently I came across some words written by Eddie Jacku, a Holocaust survivor, and I thought these words epitomised our dad, and I wanted to share them with you. Don't blame others for your misfortunes. No one has ever said that life is easy, but it's easier if you love it. If you hate your life, it becomes impossible to live. Life is not always happiness. Sometimes there are many hard days, but you must remember that you are lucky to be alive. Every breath is a gift. Life is beautiful if you let it be. Happiness is in your hands. Remember to take time to appreciate every moment of your life, the good and the bad. Sometimes there will be tears. Sometimes there will be laughter. And if you're lucky, there'll be friends to share it with. Dad was very blessed to have an amazing group of friends, and we thank you all for being here today.
Thank you so much, Paul, Chris and Lou. Just listening to those words that were spoken, I'm just not sure whether more money went out of the till to the football club or for Lou spending out at the lolly shop. I'm not quite sure. Margot, you must be just so proud. So proud. You and Noel have done a magnificent job raising three magnificent, very strong independent women. And as was mentioned a short time ago, the fruit doesn't fall far from the tree. And I say congratulations to you. I'd now like to read some special memories that have been prepared by one of Noel's closest friends, Murray Rowlands, who is here today. And I've been asked to read Murray's memories on his behalf. My memories of Noel over the years, our close friendship started back in the late 1950s when we were involved with the Shepparton Lawn Tennis Club. Noel was president of the club from 1964 to 1967 and devoted many years of service watching it grow from a 16 grass and one concrete court complex to what we now know hosting many major events, tournaments, local competitions, all while looking after his own fruit orchard. Noel always had a sport as a main part of his life. Involvement in many sports was a traditional part of the Dobson family. Margot, with family members Pauline, Christine and Louise, all played tennis at the club as well as many other sports within the Goulburn Valley. We are all well aware of the hockey achievements linked to the family. During Noel's period of involvement at the tennis club, some of the main events that took place included visits from top Australian players when professional circuit tennis was introduced, such as Ken Rosewell, Lou Hode, Mervyn Rose and Rod Laver, to mention but a few. And from anybody here who's over the age of 40, you'll know how important those names are in Australian sport. These events drew big spectator crowds and prestige to the tennis club. Another major event was the Pitt Cup, which attracted the best female tennis players from Victoria and New South Wales. And the club's biggest tournament was the annual Easter tournament, attracting many highly rated and talented players in the championship events, and always had full fields in many graded events as well. These events required a large amount of organisation and volunteer helpers. Noel led the way in hosting these events, and they truly had a social feel about them. Many great friendships with the club members and visiting players were struck both during and after these events. Noel will always be remembered for not only his sporting ability, but also for his organisational skills when involved with a sporting body or two. His name will be linked to football in the Goulburn Valley, being a premiership player for Shepparton United, and as been mentioned just a short time ago, when Mooroopna won the flag after a long drought after Noel became the club president. Linked to golf. His time spent setting up and enjoying the Kyla Golf Club, lawn bowls, playing and starting at Mooroopna, and then his organisational skills were at the forefront, the Shepparton Park Lawn Bowls Club. Also, he was involved with the Shepparton Pony Club, giving his three daughters the chance to participate when he remained more in the background, assisting when required. And with hockey, the amount of time he spent giving the girls the best chances to succeed at the highest level. Christine and Louise represented their state and Australia, also the Commonwealth and Olympic Games involvement, with medals to show for their achievements. In later years, Noel's health impacted his ability to participate, but he was always keen to know his many sporting groups, how they were progressing. He will long be remembered for his contribution to not only sporting groups, but by the community of the Goulburn Valley, of which he was a proud member. Rest in peace, Noel. And thank you so much, Maury, for handing those special words to be read at the memorial service this afternoon. We're now going to enjoy a photographic slideshow of Noel's life. And we watch a slideshow of memories which has been prepared by his family. As we view the slideshow and reflect on our own memories of Noel, please feel free to say a silent prayer for Noel and his family if you wish. Thank you.
Sweet the streets I used to own. to let me in. Shattered windows and the sound of drums. People couldn't believe what I'd become. And revolutionaries wait for my head on a silver plate, just a puppet on a lonely string. Oh, who would ever want to be king? I hear Jerusalem bells are ringing, Roman cavalry choirs are singing. Be my mirror, my sword and shield, my missionaries in a foreign field. For some reason I can't explain, I know St. Peter won't call my name. Never an honest word, but that was when I ruled the world. Hear Jerusalem bells are ringing, Roman cavalry choirs are singing. Be my mirror, my sword and shield, my missionaries in a foreign field. For some reason I can't explain, I know St. Peter won't call my name. Never an honest word, but that was when I ruled the world.
What great memories. And sometimes you'll never know the value of a moment until it becomes a memory. And when someone you love becomes a memory, the memory then becomes a treasure. Noel leaves us with precious memories that will last forever. We celebrate his achievements and acknowledge his contribution to his family, friends, and to his community. On behalf of the Dobson family, I'd like to give thanks to the following organisations for their care and support of Noel and his beloved family: the Calvary Community Care here in Shepparton, GV Hospice Care, and to the GV Health District Nurses for their wonderful support and kindness displayed to the family, particularly in more recent times. And finally, and most importantly, Nikki. I'm not sure where Nikki's seated over there. Bear with me, please. Nikki, for those who aren't aware, is Noel's goddaughter. And we want to thank Nikki for everything she's done for Noel and Margot and their family, for her kindness, love, unwavering support, and her high level of care which has enabled Noel to remain at home in the final weeks of his life. Home is where the heart is. Home is where Noel wanted to be. And home is where he got to spend his final days surrounded by his family. None of this could have been possible without Nikki's stoic and selfless support. Nikki, on behalf of the Dobson family, I say thank you. We love you, and we couldn't have done it without you. You are truly an angel in more ways than one. And how wonderful must it have been for Noel to have his cherished goddaughter care for him away from the hospital system in the comfort of his own home. And he was able to achieve that simply by you being you, Nikki. Thank you so much. A limb has fallen from the family tree, and I hear a voice that says, "Grieve not for me." Remember the best times, the laughter, the songs, the good life that I lived while I was strong. Continue my heritage, I'm counting on you. Keep on smiling, the sun will shine through. My mind is at ease, my soul is at rest, remembering all how I was truly blessed. So continue traditions no matter how small. Go on with your lives, don't stare at the wall. I miss you all dearly, so keep up your chin until that fine day when we're together again. When you are challenged or in need of comfort or reassurance, you'll be guided by Noel's life's lessons. The impact of Noel's passing will be profound, but you'll find strength to carry on without him, just as he would want you to. And although it's difficult today to see beyond sorrow, may looking back on your memories of Noel help comfort you tomorrow. Noel's family would like to thank everybody, not just for their attendance here today, but for the ongoing love and support that's been extended to them at this very difficult time. It is so much appreciated. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, for those that are able to stand, would you please stand? Thank you. Memories of Noel will never fade as long as those he leaves behind keep him close to their hearts. Continue his traditions, and for as long as you think of Noel, he will always be with you. Just as Noel's family has done, please take comfort in the knowledge that Noel has led a wonderful, long and fulfilling life, and be thankful that he has now earned eternal rest. He is now at peace, free from pain. Noel's journey is now over, but while he is no longer with us in the physical sense, he will forever be with us as long as we remember him, and whenever we hear things he might say or see things that he might do. The risk of love is loss, and the price of loss is grief. But the pain of grief is only a shadow when compared with the pain of never risking love. To know is to love, and to share is to remember. Life is short, but the memories of Noel are there with us forever. And as you reflect on the wonderful times you shared with Noel, you will smile and be thankful that he was an important part of your lives. We trust that Noel is now resting in peace. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. That concludes this afternoon's memorial service. Again, thank you so much for your attendance, and we'd love you to stay back with us to share some further memories. Thank you very much.